Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session for the group study. And we are going to do the object oriented programming using Java, which is the 206, the first subject. So, my name is Imran Sayed, and we'll start with what is Java. So, Java is basically a general purpose computer language, programming language, which is class based, object oriented, and possess many other features. So, there are many object oriented programmings which are based on classes, methods, properties, and all of those, which we will discuss. So, that's the base of Java. The entire programming language is based on the concept of classes, and it's object oriented, which you will see how it makes things easier when you're programming and when you're creating these classes. It's an application. Its application are typically compiled to bytecode and can execute on any Java virtual machine, which is JVM. We will talk about JVM later in detail, but it's just a virtual machine which allows the bytecode to be executed. The latest version of Java is JDK 18, recently released in year 2022, which is this year. And I think the next version is going to be up in September. Okay, so let's start with the object-oriented programming. So Java supports the concept of classes and objects. There are other languages also like PHP, JavaScript, which also support the concept of classes and objects. But not to confuse Java with JavaScript. Java and JavaScript are totally two different languages. Okay, so classes in Java can be considered as logical construct upon which the entire Java language is built. So a class is like an object constructor or a blueprint for creating objects. So let's say that there's the class in your college, and class has different students, and students have different properties. For example, their name, their age, etc. And each of the students perform different tasks. For example, they do their homework or probably do some activities like give exams. So their properties will be basically similar, right? Each of these students will have similar properties. Everyone will have a roll number, will have a name, will have an age. So when we are grouping together this similar type of data and functionality into one entity, which can be reused, that's when the need for classes uh, required. Okay, so class is basically a blueprint. Let's say there are multiple students, so you can just, it's like a cookie cutter. If you want to make multiple cookies, if you want to create multiple cookies, you can just create a cutter which will always produce the same size and shape of the cookies. So you can think of that. So think of a class like that. Okay, so it's a blueprint for creating objects. You can create multiple objects which will have the same properties and methods. Okay, coming back to objects. Object is nothing but a real world entity which can be distinctly identified. So object is basically an instance of a class. So when the class is created, it has certain properties and methods, and we can create multiple objects which will have same properties and methods. And that's called instantiation, which means it's like cutting cookies. So your cookies is basically the object. Okay, so object is the instance of the class that has properties and methods. A class is a template or blueprint that defines data fields and the methods. So data fields are also called member data or instance variables, and methods are also called member functions. So method is what do they do? Okay. So if you take a look at this example, let's say there's a class called circle. It has data fields like radius, and it has methods like different functions. Methods are basically functions. Get area calculates the area and returns it. Get perimeter calculates the perimeter, and set radius calculates the radius and returns it. So each of these are methods, and this is property, and they belong to the class circle. Now, once we create a class, then we want to make multiple objects that basically have the same properties and methods. We just instantiate this class, and you can create multiple object 1, object 2, object 3, and so on and so forth. So in this case, 3 objects of the circle class are created. They have the same data field. Their values can be different. So think of the classroom example I gave you, where there are multiple students. Each student will have a different name, different age, but the property name will be the same. The value could be different. Property age will be the same, but the value could be different. Okay. Similarly, here, the radius is the property. The property name is the same for all of these objects which are created out of the class, but the values are different. For the object one, it's 1, this is 25, and the last one is 125. Okay, so what are the advantages of member data and member functions within the class? Well, member functions and member data are kept inside the class to restrict the access from the outside of the class to avoid accidental modification. So when the functions and data are wrapped within that class curly braces, uh, it's really useful because they cannot be accessed from outside the class. Okay, they are kept inside the class, so they're safe. So they cannot be accidentally modified by something else. And this is where the concept of data hiding comes in. So data hiding means basically it is ensuring that keeping the data inside the class. The definition of member functions and methods inside the class provides scope of modification in the definition of a method without affecting the outside world. Which means if you want to modify a particular method or a property, you can do that all within the class. It's not going to affect the outside world. So let's say there is a variable inside the class called name. It can stay inside that, and you can change it inside of the class. But if there's another variable that exists outside the class with the same name, it's not going to have any effect on that because it's all wrapped inside of the class. So that's what it's talking about, that it provides the scope of modification. You can modify those methods and properties inside of the class. Okay. So hello everyone. I think let me add Sajjan, Samaya, Kritika. I think device is not connected. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Imran.
All good? तैयारी कैसे चल रही है?
Not good.
Okay.
Results after getting results from semester one. Nah,
Yeah. I think what we have learned from semester one is that um, since the course has been changed, like it's not the old course, it's PGDSA new. So they are going to be giving the questions from the textbook itself. So so that is why this time what we're doing is we're just focusing on everything. um, so we'll read everything, of course, so that in the exam, if a topic comes in, at least we are familiar and we can at least write about it. But our key focus during the last few days will be the first completing the assignment questions, because in one of the subjects, I think computer organization, all of the most of the, I think 99% of them had come from the assignment. For rest of the subjects, 20% was from the assignment and rest of them was from the textbook. So it is important we read a textbook. Everything that I'm teaching here is got nothing to do with what was asked in the previous question papers. This is everything from your textbook. Anytime you see a star mark, that question is actually in your assignment. So if you take a look at uh, yeah, this star. So in the assignment, you have a question like, "What's an object?" So anytime you see a star, you pay special attention to that. You need to remember because there are high chances, I feel, that for Java, the 206 basically object oriented programming, it's going to be coming. A lot of questions will come from the assignment, and the reason why I'm saying that is because the assignment is really really big. While I was preparing this presentation covers everything that is there in the textbook. While I was preparing, I noticed that they have covered like majority of the topics. So this will be pretty useful. So we will go ahead and study everything, but yeah, we'll keep a special focus on the ones that are marked with star, which are from the assignments. Does that make sense?
again, I want request. Share me the link of the assignment in Google.
Sure, sure, no problem, no problem,
I
no
have
worries.
shared my email address also in chat.
Okay.
Because last time
Uh,
whatever you has shared, only I gone, and I actually wrote very well. Just
mhm.
in one subject I got 31. So
Okay,
I felt I should, if I may write a one more question, then I will be passed.
correct, correct. Don't worry,
So
you can
that thing
reappear.
happened.
You can
Yeah.
reappear for that subject, and I'm pretty sure you'll get through this time. Cool. So I'll keep the focus on this one, and after some time, when I get tired, I'd like one of you guys to basically read this. But for now, I'm charged up, so I'll just continue.
Okay.
So,
Can you share? Can you tell me a schedule that we will gonna follow? In how many days? What subject we will cover in how many days?
see, we have
Like
20
7 days.
days left. So whatever we could cover, we'll cover. I mean, there's no like hard and fast rule. So we'll start with 206, then we'll go to 207, which is your database management. Okay, and it's pretty like pretty interesting. I mean, I didn't get bored. I got bored with this one, but I didn't get bored with the database management system. I quite enjoyed that. Found that it's pretty simple compared to this one. So yeah, so we'll go in that sequence, and whatever we could cover, we'll cover. But in the last week of before the exams, we'll just focus on everything from the assignment from all the subjects, so that at least we know the 20% of what's going to come, and then of course you guys will prepare yourself outside of this 1 hour also, so that you can continue. Okay, so coming back, what care should be taken in object-oriented programming? In Java, one object can be used as a reference to another object of the same type. This doesn't only happen in Java, but in JavaScript also. One object can be used as a reference. So when they are both of the same class type, so what happens is that when they're used as a reference, uh, if there's a change in the data member values of one object, the value of the data member of the other object from which it's been referenced can also get changed. So that's why we should take care while performing the operations on the objects. This one is from the assignment. How is an object created? So I think we already discussed. Object is created in following steps. First is declaration. So in the first line, you see the step one. The object is declared. So let's say there was a class called student. So the first thing you will put is the data type, which is student, and then the variable name, your object variable name. So that's your declaration. So variable is declared by with the variable name and the object type. Okay. In the step two is the instantiation, which is here. Instantiation, think of it like cutting your cookies. So creating objects from the class is instantiation basically. So this requires allocating the required space to the object using a new operator. So at this point, the space is not allocated, but here when you are instantiating using the new keyword and the name of the class and the function parameter, the square, the curly, sorry, the round brackets, and then you put student one, then it's going to be assigned to this object basically. And in the normal practice, they don't do it in two steps, just do it one step, like student one. Ignore this capital S. This is a small s. I think there's a mistake in the book. This variable and this variable is the same, so this is a small s, it's not capital S. Okay, so you can do it either in two steps, which is data object type, name of the variable, name of the variable object, then variable object equals new and the class of the name. And I think you guys already know it. You've done it in C programming, so it's very similar to that. The main thing I think in C programming, as well as in Java, is that you are supposed to define the data type when you're creating variables, etc. Unlike in Python, where you don't have to. Okay, first only a reference to the variable object is created, and at this stage no actual object exists, which is in this first step. The object doesn't exist, only a reference to the variable is created. And when the new operators are used, which is here, the memory is allocated for the actual existence of the object. Okay, so this is what you can write for how object is created. These two steps, and then explain these two. The new operator in Java is used for dynamically allocating memory for an object. it returns a reference to the object and also binds the reference with the object. What's the difference between classes and objects? Objects have states and behaviors, which is properties and methods, while class describes the behavior or state of the object of the type it supports. For example, let's say cars, dogs, and humans are objects of a class species. So there's a class called species, and we can create multiple objects out of that. One object can be car, other could be dogs, next could be humans, could also have aliens. A dog object of a class species can have its state, which are properties like name, breed, color. So each dog will have name, breed, color, are the state. Barking, wagging, and tail, all of these are going to be methods. Okay, so behavior method like running dog is a dog's behavior. Let me just remove this part. I think barking, wagging, tail will come as a behavior. Okay, data hiding is a question from the assignment. Okay, so how is data hiding achieved, or what is data hiding? I think we read about data hiding is basically just showing the essentials and hiding the actual facts. For example, you're sending a text message to someone. All you care about as a user is that the text message is delivered and you get that blue tick. You don't care about what's in, goes behind the scene, and what network request is made and what is encrypted form and all of that. You don't care about it. So that's data hiding. So data hiding enables developers to protect the data, and they hide the implementation details from the outside interference. To implement the data hiding, variables in a class should have private access modifier. Okay, so when you are creating a class and when you're declaring variables, there's something called access modifiers, which you already know about, which are private, public, protected. So all of these called access modifiers. We'll study about this in detail a little later in this course. But um, to implement data hiding, you need to define your variables as private, so it cannot be accessed from outside world. So when someone needs to access or modify the private variable from outside of the class, then it should only be accessible by using get and set methods. Now you must be wondering that I just said that uh, you can't really access your variables outside of the class. It's hidden from the outside the world. You're kind of wrapping it inside of the curly braces. So how is it that some of which can be accessed from outside? So here what we are referring to is not just outside the class, but later on when we do inheritance, where one class is inheriting another class, so the child class cannot access these private variables, even though it has inherited it. It cannot access the private variables. If you want to access the private variable, then in the parent class you have to define two different methods. One is get and second is set. The job of get is to get that value of that variable, and the job of set is to set the value of the variable. We'll look at the example in some time. So they are also called getters and setters. So this get method and set method also called getters and setters. Again, this is an question in the assignment. Private variables can only be accessed within the same class. However, it is possible to access them if we provide public get and set methods, like just a repetition of what I just said. The get method returns the variable value and set method sets the value, like I said. Then we can use those methods, example get name and set name, to access the value of private variable from outside the class. By whom? By the child classes. So in assignment they've asked write a program with getter and setter to demonstrate data hiding. So why they're calling data hiding is because if you declare anything private, we are kind of hiding that from the outside classes, right? Uh, so if you declare something as private, it cannot be accessed by the child classes unless you use getter and setter. So that's what you need to write. You need to write a program that will demonstrate getter and setters. So let's say there's a class called person. We declare name variable as private, which means it's a restricted access. If I try to access it from outside, let me show you. So let's say there's another class called main. uh, and this class basically is instantiating. So we create an object basically using this class. So ideally in this object, because it's a instantiation and it's object of this class, ideally I should be able to access this name, but we can't because it's private. The modifier is private. So if I say my object dot name, which is this property, you will get an error for that. You can't set the value. Here you're trying to set it, and here you're trying to get it. But both in getting and setting, we can't really get that. Okay. So how do we do that? So you can see that we have defined getter and setter. So you cannot directly access, but you can access it through get name and set name. So I'll show you that. So here, instead of directly accessing my object dot name like we were doing here, we will basically use these methods. So in order for us to set it, we'll call the setters, which is set name, and it's taking this parameter as the value. So John, so it's going to set the value of name as John, and then in order for us to get it, we'll use the getter, which is dot get name over here, and this is going to get us the value of name because all it's doing is just returning the name. So if you print it, then that's what it's going to give you. If you're wondering what is this system out println, system is basically a class. I think it's a package, yeah, and out of which you have different methods available, and you can use that to print. So I think in other programming languages we're using printf and printar and all of those, but here in order for you to print, you'll use system.out.println. Whatever you pass here, that'll be printed on the screen. Like you can see in output, you have John here. Okay. Now write a program to demonstrate data hiding. I think it's the same thing. I'm just giving an example. Okay, I want somebody else to read it now. Who wants to read? Sajjan, you want to go? Still here? Yeah,
Yeah,
Ashish is also.
I am here, but actually I'm doing some work, personal work.
Okay, Ashish.
Yep, that's fine. I can go.
Okay. So now we'll talk about abstraction and how to use these abstract classes. So yeah, start.
Yeah. So data abstraction is the process of hiding detailed information and only presenting the essential information to the user. For example, the car can be viewed as a car rather than its individual components.
Okay.
So in the Java programming, abstraction can be achieved by using the abstract class or interfaces. So any user, like any client, can use a method without knowing about its implementation details.
Right. So it's the same like it's same thing as data hiding.
Yeah,
Abstracting
it's the
something
same.
means, yeah, hiding the detailed information and only presenting the essential information. Okay. So
Yeah,
in Java we use abstract classes for that, which we will discuss now. Yep, go on.
yeah.
1 second, let me
So
just hide these guys. 1 second. The animation is missing for these. So we'll continue with the abstraction. Yeah, go on.
yeah. For example, the implementation, like body of the method block box is hidden from the user. As you can see in the right side the diagram, it says
Mhm.
like method body and the method header. So method body is hidden.
Yeah, correct.
It's a
So
black box.
user doesn't have to care what this function does. Okay, right? There's a function called black box. So user doesn't have to care. All he cares is that whatever it does, it's gonna give it the parameter it requires, and in return it expects something, right? Whatever is going inside of it, he doesn't care. So that's what the abstraction is, like hiding
Yeah.
the detailed information and just focusing on the essentials.
So when we use the system.out.println on the method to display a string, we do not bother about how it is implemented. Yeah. For example, sending SMS where you type the text and send the message. You don't know the internal processing about the message delivery. Just like it's just like you're sending the message.
Correct.
Abstraction lets you focus on what the object does instead of how it does it.
Okay. Okay, let's do abstract class.
Yeah. So a class which is declared as abstract with an abstract keyword is known as the abstract class. Like you can see the abstract class bike. The bike is
Yep.
declared as an abstract class.
With a keyword.
Yeah, with the keyword abstract.
Okay.
It can have abstract and non-abstract methods.
So
So
what are
it
these
can have
abstract method?
it.
Any method that's
Yeah,
yeah, any method that's defined with an abstract keyword. It just defined, not implemented, which means there's nothing inside of it. That's the abstract method.
yeah. So it needs to be extended, and its method implemented by class extending it.
Right. So for example, Honda 4 is extending the abstract class bike. This is another class which is extending child class extending the parent. Now, if it's going to extend, it has to implement its method, abstract method. So you can see over here that run method is implemented, which means it's doing something. This is just declaring, and this is like implementation means it's doing something. Okay, so here is printing something, the same method. So whatever class is going to basically extend an abstract class, it has to implement all of its methods. If there are two methods, it's supposed to implement two methods here, but since there's only one, it's going to implement one method. Okay, carry on.
It cannot be instantiated.
Instantiated. Okay.
Instantiated. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
perfect, perfect. Got it in first go. Good. So you can't use new bike and create another object of that. So one of the properties of abstract class is that you can only extend it, but you can't instantiate an object out of that.
A method which is declared as an abstract and does not have implementation in the abstract class is known as the abstract method. Example, the run method.
Correct. So here it's been declared but not implemented. Where will it be implemented? It will be implemented by the one who extends it over here.
It can have constructors and static method also.
Okay.
Yeah. It can have final methods which will force the subclass not to change the body of the method.
Okay. So final method is something which is a method of a class, which we'll discuss later. But for now, you can understand that final method is something that will always be executed. Now let me pull this guy on top, because I think before even talking about abstract over here, we should tell what abstract is. Right? Here we are talking about what it can have abstract method, but we have not explained what it is. So let's put this here. Okay. Let's go to the next one.
So, encapsulation.
Just 1 second. Okay.
It's an encapsulation. It is a process of binding the data members and method together. It is
Oops,
done.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think animations are missing with these guys.
Who made this?
This one,
The yeah. The
I only
whole.
made it, but I thought that it was already there, but I guess it was not there.
Mhm. Okay.
Carry on.
Fine. Yeah. Should I?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. It is done securely by making the data field accessible only to the class members by declaring the data field as private.
Okay, I think we already discussed about if we want to, not allow the child classes to access a particular variable, we can declare it as private. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you declare something as private, it cannot be accessible by the child members. That's what it's talking about. And encapsulation is basically binding the data members and methods together within a class.
Yeah. So everyone outside of the class knows how to access and use the methods without thinking about implementation details. In Java, setter or getter method are also used to ensure the read only or write only operations.
Right. So data hiding, encapsulation, abstraction, all of these are like kind of talking about the same thing, which is hiding the data, protecting the data, not leaking out of any variable, not leaking out of the class, their access, all of these. Okay. Just slight difference between each of these. So encapsulation is binding the data members and methods together. We've already talked about that if you declared something private, it cannot be accessed by its child class unless you use setter and getter method. And we already looked at the example of that. So this is the same thing talking about that you can use setter and getter method to access them. Okay, I want somebody else to read now. Let's see who's there. Sajjan, when you're free, then let me know. Okay. So Maya, you want to go?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Let's talk about the inheritance now. This is the easiest one.
Inheritance provides reusability by inheriting the property in a new class from the derived class. It is a process by which one object acquires the property of another object. The inheritance allows for the creation of a new class similar to the previously defined class, and the new class can have its own data members and methods.
Correct. So when we're inheriting a class from parent class, then it can have all the methods of the parent class, but it can also have new methods. So child can have more methods also. That's what it's talking about.
This feature of Java supports the concept of hierarchical classification.
Okay.
In object-oriented programming, a base class is seen as a superclass or parent class, and a derived class as a subclass or child class.
Okay. So I think we already read about classes and object-oriented programming in both C language as well as in Python. The just naming conventions a slight difference. I'm not sure if they were called superclass in Python or not, but here you can remember that they are called superclass and the child class called subclasses. But it's like the same explanation you need to give there also, but just use the word Java in Java and it's going to be the same. Okay, carry on.
Advantages of inheritance. It can reduce the development time of the program because reusability of the code requires less memory, less execution time, and redundancy of the code can be minimized.
Hmm.
Flexibility. Inheritance makes the code flexible to change, as you will adjust only in one place and the rest of the code will work smoothly.
Yeah, so in case
Overriding.
let's say there is one parent class and there are multiple child classes which are inheriting the same parent class, and there's a particular method of a parent class. So if you want to make a change, you just have to make a change in that parent class, and all other child classes which are inheriting it, those changes will reflect on those child classes. So that's what it's talking about, that it's flexible. You can make the code change really easy, because if you were not inheriting them, then you had to go and make changes on every single class. Okay, carry on.
Overriding. With the help of inheritance, you can override the methods of the base class.
Yeah.
The data hiding. The base class in inheritance decides which data to be kept private such that the derived class will not be able to alter it.
Correct. Okay, so let's make that. Okay, so it's just a diagram. This is a base class. Feature is a method. Basically there are two methods, a and b. Now there are three different child classes which have been derived from the base class. Each will have method A and B, so you can see each have A and B, but they can have their own methods also. So you can see features, this one has feature C, this one has feature D, this one has feature F. Okay, so that's your example of inheritance. Let's talk about types of inheritance. Go on.
Single inheritance, a class inherits another class.
Yep.
Multi-level, there is a chain of inheritance. One class inherits another class which is inherited by another class.
Yep.
Hierarchical, two or more classes inherit a single class. To
Right.
reduce the complexity and simplify the language, multiple inheritance is not supported in Java.
Okay, so multiple inheritance is not supported. We only have single, multi-level, and hierarchical. Single means one class inherits another one. Multi-level means that one class inherits another one, and that child class is inherited by another class. So it's like a chain. And hierarchical means that multiple classes inherit the same class, like in this third example. Okay. So Sumaya, please explain this example.
Class animal has a method eat. It
Hmm.
prints eating. It has a subclass dog, and
Hmm.
it has a new method bark that prints barking.
Hmm.
And uh, in this class, test inheritance, main method, you're initializing a new dog and
Hmm.
calling d dot bark, which will print barking, and d dot eat, which will print eating from the animal class.
Right. Ashish, what is the parent class called? What is the other name of the parent class?
Uh, in terms of what?
What is so like the child class is called subclass. What is the parent class called
Super?
in Java? In
Super?
Java, superclass. Yes, correct.
Correct?
Good. Yep. Perfect. Okay. Cool. So that's the single level inheritance, multi-level inheritance. Yes. Carry on.
There's class animal again, and
Mm-hmm.
dog inherits animal, baby
Mm-hmm.
dog inherits dog, and it has a new method weeping.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the main method, we're initializing a baby dog, and d dot weep will call baby dog's method, bark will call dog's method, and eat will call the animal class's eat method.
Okay. So a question. Let's say dog actually has another method, walking. Will that method be accessible by uh, baby dog?
Yes.
Will it be accessible by test inheritance too?
No.
Why not?
Uh, it can be called in test inheritance too because it's not private, but
Correct.
you can call it on the class.
So that's what I'm asking. So it can be accessed inside of test inheritance too, right?
Yeah, yeah, it can.
Okay, good. What's the keyword we use to extend, to inherit a class?
Extends.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we're not going to go and explain this. This is very simple. Basically, there's one class animal, and all the other classes like dog and cat are inheriting this. So that's why it's hierarchical, because multiple classes are inheriting the same class, and they are accessible here. Bark. Hmm. Okay. You see, bark is not available here. Why? Is because we instantiated cat. We didn't instantiate dog, and dog is the method bark also actually belongs to bark. Sorry, dog. So that's why it's not available here. If we want to access that, we have to instantiate dog also. Member access in inheritance. Often, an instance variable of a class will be declared private to prevent its unauthorized use of tampering. I think we have been talking about this concept every now and then, and it's been repeated. Inheriting a class does not overrule the private access restrictions. So, I think this is something I explained just a while ago, that just because you create a variable with a access modifier called private doesn't mean that you can access that in its child class. If you want to access it, you have to use getter and setter method. Thus, even though subclass includes all of its members of its parent, it cannot access those members that have been declared private. Now, I talk about polymorphism. This is a question from the assignment: polymorphism and its advantages. This concept was also there in Python, if anyone remembers. Poly means many, morphs means forms. So something that can take many forms. That's called polymorphism. So polymorphism is the ability of an object to take many forms. So in Java, objects can take many forms. It allows one interface to be used for general class of actions. So that's now we're talking about advantages. We spoke about what is polymorphism. Now we're talking about advantages. Polymorphism principle is implemented in Java programming with methods overloading and overriding. Again, these were concepts in uh, Python, and they are the same here as well. So a lot of things are repeated. Overloading allows methods that perform similar or closely related functions to be accessed through a common name, which means the same function can be called multiple times, but with different parameters. I think Ashish, you had told me this before exam. I asked you.
Yeah,
Remember that?
correct,
Yes, you can't forget
correct.
this. There are high chances gonna come in the exam
Again,
again. Yeah. I mean, they'll not ask you loading, overriding. Probably they'll ask you polymorphism, and you have to answer.
polymorphism. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the favorite thing of Java.
Yeah. Java. It's a favorite thing for Nitin sir also. He quite enjoys talking about it.
Yeah, correct, correct.
Overriding works together with inheritance to enable code reuse of existing class without need for recompilation. So overriding is nothing but if there is a method that exists in a parent class, you can redefine that method in the child class and make it do something else. That's overriding. It tends to reduce the pairing of multiple functionalities. It allows programmers to reuse, evaluate, execute the program modules, forms written once. In certain aspects, they can be repeated. Okay, types of polymorphism. Again, question from the assignment. There are two types of polymorphism. In fact, they are achieved through overloading and overriding, but the names are just a little different. So first is static polymorphism, which means is the linking of the functions with an object during compile times. So compile time is something that you need to remember for static polymorphism. It is achieved through overloading. A dynamic polymorphism is the linking of the function with an object during runtime. So JVM performs the process at runtime. Compiler doesn't determine the method to be executed. Achieved through overriding. So static and dynamic polymorphism. One is achieved through overloading. Second is achieved through overriding. Um, the first one is linking a function with an object during compile time, and second is at the runtime. Okay, you may have to give an example. Very simple, very easy to give this example. And this is the class called sum. Uh, Same method having different parameter. You can see that first one has x and y, second one x, y, and z, and third one has the x and y, but with different data type. Okay, but this function name is the same. You call these functions with different values. Okay. So overloading allows different methods to have the same name but different signatures, where a signature can differ by the number of input parameters or type of input parameters or both. So the meaning of signature is that number of parameters can be different and their data type can be different or both. Again, overloading is related to compile time or static polymorphism. Overriding, uh, same method can be redefined in the child class but make it do something else. Like you can see a different parameters passed here. So it's probably doing something else. Like here, it's calculating the area of a triangle class. Here in this second child class, it's calculating circle area. And on the third one, it's calculating the rectangle area. So a single method draw can be used to draw different shapes like triangle, circle, and rectangle. So here we can observe that the name of the function is the same, but the functionality is different, and making it do something else. This type of polymorphism is known as function overriding. Now the use of super keyword. So to understand the concept of super, we have to again remember that a parent class is called a super class. So if we want to call the um, one second, yeah, if you want to call the constructor of the parent class, which is a super class, then you need to use a super method. So super keyword refers to a superclass of objects. It is used to call the superclass methods and to access a superclass constructor. So there's a function in the parent class called animal sound. And because this is a method of a parent class, if you want to access that, you can use it using super dot whatever the name of the function is. Okay. It is used to eliminate the confusion between superclasses and subclasses that have the methods with the same name. So why do you think this concept of super came in? So remember we spoke about overriding. And overriding means that if there's a function here called animal sound and you define the same function here called animal sound, you're kind of overriding it and making do something else. But there will be some confusion. When you call this animal sound, are you calling the animal sound of the child or are you calling this animal sound of the parent? So there's no difference. So to make that differentiation, to make it easy for you to understand that I'm actually calling the parent and not child, we use a super. So anywhere you say super, you understand that that particular class is trying to access the parent class method and not its own method, because there could be, maybe this is a different method, but there could be animal sound somewhere here declared, so you'll get confused which is getting called. That's why super is used. Okay, cool. Access modifiers in Java, I think we already discussed what they are. Can anyone tell me which are the access modifiers in Java?
Private, public, and protected.
Private, protected,
Public,
public. Is there anything else? There's one more, I think. Let's see. Four types. There's one more. Does anyone remember?
I think the default type.
Yes, yes, exactly. So private, the access level of the private modifier is only within the class. Okay, so Sumaya, question for you. So we discussed that private variables can only be accessed within the class. If you try to access it from outside the class into a child class, how can we access it?
Using getter and setter methods.
Perfect, right. Cool. Default. The access level of the default modifier is only within the package. Now you must be wondering what a package is. Well, package is basically the group of the similar type of classes which performing similar kind of functionalities. We'll discuss in detail about package, but let's say you are creating your own custom class, and so you can define your own package with like package dot util dot whatever the name you want to keep it, like some custom name. So your classes belong to your own package. So packages, kind of think of it like a folder. So uh, there could be multiple other classes in that package. So what it's talking about is that the access level of the default is within the package, which means there are other classes within the same package that can be accessed. Okay, so it cannot be accessed from outside the package. So if there are other package, it cannot be accessed there, but only within the package. If you don't specify any access level, it will be default. तो जैसे जनरली हम लिखते हैं पब्लिक या प्राइवेट, तो अगर कुछ वहाँ पे एक्सेस मॉडिफायर नहीं यूज करते हैं तो दैट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज डिफॉल्ट. Protected, the access level of the protected modifier is within the package and outside the package through a child class, which means अगर कोई भी चीज़ प्रोटेक्टेड है तो सिर्फ वो चाइल्ड क्लास में एक्सेस हो सकती है, और या फिर विद इन द सेम पैकेज. इफ यू डू नॉट मेक अ चाइल्ड क्लास, इट कैन नॉट बी एक्सेस फ्रॉम आउटसाइड द पैकेज. मतलब आउटसाइड पैकेज नहीं एक्सेस कर सकते, बेसिकली चाइल्ड में ही एक्सेस कर सकते हैं. Okay, public, the access level of the public modifier is everywhere. It can be accessed from within the class, outside the class, within the package, and outside the package. Okay, use of constructor. यहाँ पे बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक टॉपिक है जो we डिस्कस करेंगे. तो ये जो यहाँ पे दिख रहे हैं टॉपिक्स, काफ़ी सारे इसमें टॉपिक हैं जो टेक्स्ट बुक के नीचे क्वेश्चंस आते हैं ना, उस क्वेश्चंस में से भी है। तो उसमें शायद एक क्वेश्चन है कि गिव एन एग्जांपल एंड डिफाइन अ कंस्ट्रक्टर। तो ये हमारा जावा क्लास है, क्लास मेन। इसके अंदर एक कंस्ट्रक्टर है, उसका नाम हमने मेन रखा है। और कंस्ट्रक्टर जब भी डिफाइन करोगे तो उसका नाम सेम रखना है जो क्लास का नाम है। तो इसमें मेन है तो मेन रखना है, कुछ और नाम होता तो वो रखते। तो इसमें you can basically do whatever you want here. You can create a variable, assign value, whatever. Okay, and then you can basically instantiate it here. So you can create an object of the main class. Okay, so when you create an object of the main class, basically then this constructor is automatically called. So don't get confused with this main and this main. This is not the same. This is basically instantiating the main class. Okay, so let me show you. Constructor is used for initializing the objects at the same time of their creation. Constructors have the same name as the name of their class, which we discussed. Once a constructor is defined and used for object creation, it is automatically called and the memory is allocated before the new operation completes. तो जैसे इंस्टेंशिएट होता है ये ऑटोमेटिकली कॉल हो जाएगा। तो ये क्लास जैसे इंस्टेंशिएट होगा तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली कॉल होगा। मेन मेथड इज द एंट्री पॉइंट। ओके, अब डिफरेंस क्या है इस मेन मेथड में और इस मेन मेथड में? तो अगर याद होगा सी प्रोग्रामिंग में हमारा एक मेन मेथड था और हमको पता है कि जब तक हमारा मेन मेथड नहीं होगा हमारा प्रोग्राम रन नहीं होगा, उसको कम से कम एक मेन मेथड तो चाहिए ही चाहिए। तो क्वेश्चंस थे कि भाई मिनिमल मेथड क्या रिक्वायर्ड है हमारे कोई एक सी प्रोग्राम को रन करने के लिए। तो उसमें था कि मेन मेथड हमारा एटलीस्ट होना चाहिए, तभी ये प्रोग्राम हमारा रन करेगा। तो जब कंपाइलर रन करेगा तो वो ढूंढेगा उस मेन फंक्शन को। तो इसीलिए जावा में वो मेन आपका एंट्री पॉइंट है जब प्रोग्राम रन होता है। सो मेन मेथड इज द एंट्री पॉइंट फॉर एनी प्रोग्राम इन जावा। दिस इज द मेथड विच इज इन्वोक्ड बाय जावा वर्चुअल मशीन टू एग्जीक्यूट द प्रोग्राम। तो मेन मेथड चाहिए ही चाहिए हमको। अब दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या, कंस्ट्रक्टर और मेन में? एवरी क्लास इंक्लूडिंग एब्स्ट्रैक्ट हैज अ कंस्ट्रक्टर इवन इफ यू डोंट डिक्लेयर वन एक्सप्लिसिटली। मतलब अगर तुमने यहाँ पे डिक्लेयर नहीं भी किया तो कंपाइलर खुद से एक डिफॉल्ट ऐड कर देगा। कोड में नहीं ऐड करेगा, वो दिखेगा नहीं तुमको, लेकिन बिहाइंड द सीन्स वो ऐड कर लेगा। ठीक है, सो एवरी क्लास नीड्स टू हैव अ कंस्ट्रक्टर और वो खुद ब खुद डिफाइन करेगा। एंड जनरली जब हम जावा प्रोग्राम लिखते हैं तो हम कंस्ट्रक्टर वगैरह डिफाइन करते नहीं, उसकी जरूरत नहीं है। बट हाँ, प्रोग्राम जब रन करेगा तो वो ढूंढेगा मेन को। मेन इज द एंट्री पॉइंट। सो व्हाट्स द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू? Constructor allow creation of instances of a given class, whereas main method merely allows for a potential entry point for starting the program. तो प्रोग्राम स्टार्ट करने के लिए मेन फंक्शन का होना जरूरी है एज एन एंट्री पॉइंट, और कंस्ट्रक्टर जो है वो इट हेल्प्स इन इंस्टेंशिएशन ऑफ अ गिवन क्लास। Okay, we have like 5-6 minutes left. Then the next is the order of execution of a constructor in Java. Ashish?
Yeah. So every class has its own constructor,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore the execution of constructor starts after the object initialization. It allows a certain sequence according to the class hierarchy. Uh, there can be different orders of execution depending on the type of inheritance. In single inheritance, the constructor of the base class is executed first.
मतलब parent.
Parent, yeah. The multi-level inheritance, all the upper class constructors are executed when an instance of bottommost child class is created.
Okay.
Okay. And calling the same class constructor using this keyword here, inheritance is not implemented. But there can be multiple constructors of the single class, and those constructors can be accessed using this keyword.
Okay. So
The
there
last
can be
point is
multiple constructor of the single class. एक क्लास में मल्टीपल कंस्ट्रक्टर्स हो सकते हैं, लेकिन मल्टीपल मेन फंक्शन नहीं हो सकता। मेन आपका जो एंट्री पॉइंट वो एक ही रहेगा, लेकिन मल्टीपल कंस्ट्रक्टर हो सकते हैं। उसका एग्जांपल तो मैंने भी नहीं देखा है, बट आई गेस वन ऑफ यू कैन टेक दिस अप एंड we can discuss this tomorrow, like explain it tomorrow, like what it means. लेकिन ये मैंने पढ़ा
Yes,
था कि
yes.
मल्टीपल नेम नहीं हो सकता, मल्टीपल कंस्ट्रक्टर हो सकते हैं। तो टू सम इट अप, इसमें ये बताना चाह रहा है कि ऑफ कोर्स कंस्ट्रक्टर का नहीं डिफाइन किया तो ऑटोमेटिकली बिहाइंड द सीन कंपाइलर डिफाइन करके उसको एग्जीक्यूट करा देगा, ठीक है, जब भी इंस्टेंशिएट होता है। तो सिर्फ सीक्वेंस की यहाँ बात हो रही, क्या ऑर्डर में एग्जीक्यूट होगा, कब, जब हम किसी को जब क्लासेस को इनहेरिट करते हैं। तो सिंगल लेवल जब इनहेरिटेंस होता है तो बेस क्लास जो है वो सबसे पहले उसका कंस्ट्रक्टर एग्जीक्यूट होगा। मल्टीपल लेवल में ऊपर वाले क्लास से स्टार्ट होगा, ठीक है, और कॉलिंग द सेम कंस्ट्रक्टर यूजिंग द दिस कीवर्ड। तो दिस कीवर्ड की यहाँ बात हो रही है। हाँ, तो अगर किसी एक क्लास में मल्टीपल कंस्ट्रक्टर हैं तो दिस कीवर्ड का यूज करके उन कंस्ट्रक्टर्स को एक्सेस कर सकते हैं। कॉलिंग सुपर क्लास कंस्ट्रक्टर यूजिंग सुपर कीवर्ड, चाइल्ड कंस्ट्रक्टर और मेथड कैन एक्सेस बेस क्लास कंस्ट्रक्टर और मेथड यूजिंग सुपर कीवर्ड। तो ये तो हमने ऑलरेडी अभी यहाँ पढ़ा था, आ गया सुपर। हाँ, तो ये तो कंस्ट्रक्टर मेथड नहीं है, लेकिन अगर कोई और कंस्ट्रक्टर मेथड अगर डिफाइन करेंगे तो सुपर से हम उसको एक्सेस कर सकते हैं। वो यहीं पे एक्सप्लेन किया था वो चीज़। इट इज़ यूज टू कॉल द सुपर क्लास मेथड, मतलब कोई भी सुपर क्लास के मेथड को एक्सेस कर सकते हैं सुपर से, और या फिर सुपर क्लास के कंस्ट्रक्टर को एक्सेस कर सकते हैं सुपर कीवर्ड से।
अच्छा, इमरान एक चीज एक्सप्लेन करो ना, बेसिक एकदम टर्म्स में, कंस्ट्रक्टर होता क्या है?
कंस्ट्रक्टर इज बेसिकली, अगर
ये कौन
कोई
से एक रियल टाइम एग्जांपल कुछ ऐसा दे सकते हो तो ऐसा कुछ?
रियल टाइम एग्जाम्पल तो मुझे सोचना पड़ेगा, लेकिन सिंपल से वर्ड है कि कोई भी क्लास है, हो सकता है उसमें कोई चीज़ की ज़रूरत उसको शुरू में पड़ती है, किसी भी डेटा की, जैसे नेम हो गया। फॉर एग्जांपल अगर स्टूडेंट का क्लास है तो स्टूडेंट क्लास में कुछ चीज़ें ज़रूरी होंगी ही उसके लिए, शायद नेम हो गया, एज हो गया, फॉर एग्जांपल रोल नंबर हो गया। तो वो सारी चीज़ें हम कंस्ट्रक्टर के अंदर डिफाइन कर सकते हैं। और हमें पता है कि जब क्लास इंस्टेंशिएट होगा तो कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑटोमेटिकली कॉल होता है, यानी कि वो वैल्यूज वो ऑटोमेटिकली अवेलेबल हो जाएंगी। कोई हो सकता है फंक्शनलिटी हो जो कि हमें एग्जीक्यूट कराना है, जब हमारा क्लास इंस्टेंशिएट हो तो वो अवेलेबल होना चाहिए, रेडली अवेलेबल होना चाहिए। तो वो चीज़ें हम कंस्ट्रक्टर में कर सकते हैं। तो कोई भी चीज़ हमें बेसिकली हम चाहते हैं कि क्लास इंस्टेंशिएट हो तो वो चीज़ अवेलेबल हो या वो चीज़ एग्जीक्यूट हो जाए तुरंत, तो हम कंस्ट्रक्टर में कर सकते हैं। तो ये मेन यूज होता है कंस्ट्रक्टर किसी भी प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज में। It gets automatically called, you don't really have to call it. The moment you instantiate a class, it's going to get called automatically. और जनरली हम कंस्ट्रक्टर में ही वो चीज़ें रखते हैं, लाइक बेसिक वेरिएबल्स हमारे जो यूज होने वाले हैं क्लास में,
हम
या
लोग
फिर
एनवायरनमेंट वेरिएबल कंसीडर कर सकते हैं कंस्ट्रक्टर को, मतलब वो ग्रुप ऑफ
एनवायरमेंट
एनवायरनमेंट।
वेरिएबल तो कांस्टेंट होता है ना, वो क्लास क्लास का नहीं होगा। वो क्लास का जो चीज़ें होती है, क्लास का पार्ट होता
अच्छा,
है,
ओके।
क्लास के वेरिएबल होते हैं, उसकी बात हो रही है। जैसे कि यहाँ पे उसको नेम की प्रॉब्लम, उसको नेम की ज़रूरत थी तो उसने वो नेम डाल दिया। अब उसको पता है कि नेम अवेलेबल होगा ऑटोमेटिकली, वो देखो ऑब्जेक्ट डॉट नेम से उसने एक्सेस कर लिया उसको। तो यहाँ पे उसको डिफाइन करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ी, उसको पता है कंस्ट्रक्टर ऑटोमेटिकली कॉल होगा और ये वैल्यू असाइन हो जाएगी। आप डायरेक्टली इसको एक्सेस कर सकते हैं।
No, it is just to reduce the runtime of the program, like that. Like एक हम लोग कंसिडर करके रख सकते हैं कि वो ऑलरेडी रिजल्ट बना के रख देगा, जस्ट डोंट लाइक नॉर्मल इनहेरिटेंस। कि नॉर्मल
या
इनहेरिटेंस में जब हम क्लास को इनहेरिट करते हैं, फिर जब उसको एक्सेस करते हैं, जब कॉल करते हैं क्लास मेथड्स को, तभी वो मेथड्स रन होंगे उसके क्लास में, मतलब जो भी क्लास में इनहेरिट किया है वो क्लास में रन होंगे, और फिर रिजल्ट
या
मिलेगा, रादर देन टेकिंग वैल्यूज डायरेक्टली फ्रॉम देयर।
राइट, राइट। आई थिंक
ऐसा कुछ
इन
कंसीडर
मेनी
किया।
केसेस दैट एक्सेप्ट्स पैरामीटर्स आल्सो। सो जैसे कोई क्लास जब इंस्टेंशिएट करते हो, मे बी न्यू मेन, और किसी वैल्यू की उसको ज़रूरत है, तो यहाँ से पास करोगे तो यहाँ पे अवेलेबल हो जाएगा और उसको यहाँ पे यूज़ कर सकते हैं। तो ये भी
ओके,
इसका
ओके,
एक कॉन्सेप्ट है। तो आज के लिए आई थिंक बहुत हो गया। एक फर्स्ट डे पे आई डोंट वांट टू टेक टू मच टाइम, तो वी आर डन विद।
इमरान रिकॉर्डिंग स्टॉप हो जाएगा तो सिर्फ 2 मिनट रुक जाना फिर।
हाँ ठीक, let me stop the